This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, 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 and welcome to Dream Power Radio. This is a place where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. We've all heard the phrase, if you have lemons, make lemonade. It's a useful bit of advice, basically telling us to make the best out of a bad situation. And it makes sense to think about it when things are going well in our lives. But what often happens when things turn worse is that we take them all too personally, crying out, why me? Why do bad things always happen to me? If we're religious, we may lash out at God, and to survive, we may take on the mantle of victimhood. And we'll look upon that old saying as naive foolishness, believing nothing good can result from the awful experiences put upon us. But this negative thinking, while totally understandable, is ultimately defeating. In order to heal, we have to learn how to accept the traumas that come into our lives in order to move on and to grow. One person who understands this all too well is my guest today, transformational coach, healer, and speaker, Dr. Sage Breslin. Sage has walked her walk through all kinds of trauma, and for decades has counseled others on how to embrace the best versions of themselves. So welcome back to Dream Power Radio, Sage.
Thank you so much.
Well, Sage, before we go on with how you help others, I do want to start with your most recent journey, which is your bout with multiple myeloma. So can you tell us how you faced hearing this devastating diagnosis and the steps that you've taken to deal with it?
Yeah, I think in a very strange way, when I heard the diagnosis finally as what it was for multiple myeloma, and I have relapsing and remitting myeloma. So when I heard it finally, I had actually been with another oncologist for almost 18 months who kept telling me I was fine and that it was just like a benign protein in my blood. And the problem with all of that is that I'd been feeling pretty sick for almost a year, to the point where I could get myself to work. But about 3 o'clock, I started to just feel like, and I know a lot of people feel tired at 3 o'clock, but literally, like, I couldn't get up from my desk. I couldn't drive home. I'd have to call the neighbor to come and get me. And I knew something was wrong. I've always been a very active person. In fact, a lot of people have looked at me as an Energizer bunny, constantly multitasking and doing things, and very efficiently as well. And so I knew there was something wrong. I knew that what this other oncologist was telling me wasn't correct. So when I finally was kind of beside myself by being told once again, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, all the tests are fine, I finally looked up the number for the specialist on the West Coast, and she happened to be in my town. And I called, and they were able to give me an appointment. And when they asked who the referring doctor was, I said, well, that would be me. And they said, well, were you with another physician sometime before? And I told them who it was. And they got very quiet. And they said, oh, we get a lot of people from her office. And I thought, oh my gosh, this person is really just not operating in her wheelhouse. So when I finally met with my doctor and all the tests were repeated and she gave me the diagnosis, there was part of me that was relieved because I knew that I was sick. And I even knew that I had multiple myeloma. I had started down the road of all my symptoms and kind of whittled it down. And I thought, I've got some kind of blood cancer. I don't know whether it's leukemia or, I don't know, but this is what I think. And so after the second bone marrow biopsy, they said, you have blood cancer. This is very clear in all the tests. And I said, well, how long do you think I've had that? And, they nailed it. And the rest is kind of history. That was about 5 years ago. And just more than a year ago, I had a bone marrow transplant to really give myself the best shot I could at making my way through this journey. And usually when you have a transplant, you do chemotherapy to get you into remission before the transplant. The transplant is to kind of knock out any, remaining bugs, so to speak. And I wasn't able to reach remission before the transplant. So while the transplant was successful in doing what it does, which is replacing all of the bone marrow in the body, I still am not in remission. And while I am, as a spiritual gal, very hopeful that eventually that will be mine to experience, the oncologists have just kind of said, you're just one of those unique people that unfortunately is going to be living with this. And, we've just got to do right by you, and we'll find the right dose of chemo, and you're just going to follow your body through this. So that's kind of where I am now. And you're right. It was traumatic initially, and it was a big drama when I initially got into the hospital, but that hospital stay actually saved my life, because that's where they found, this very odd looking CBC panel. And that's what landed me even with the first hematologist, oncologist. And then I went from there. So
yeah,
that's my story.
It's funny when you're talking about that, it got me thinking, we always have to trust our gut, because your gut knew.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, right down to pretty clear on what kind of cancer, even, like the symptoms were so specific that, I just knew. I knew my body was talking to me saying, okay, slow down. We've got a problem. Got to rewind, got to revise and revamp. So.
Right. And you have been documenting your experiences in weekly videos. Have you found that doing these videos actually help you with your treatment?
I think it really does. I think, especially with the rare and unique cancers, we can feel so isolated and alone with it. And probably any kind of cancer can do that. But when you get a cancer that other people don't have, it can really feel like you're in this box all by yourself with no one to talk to, honestly. And it can be pretty lonely. And after transplant, that first 100 days, basically don't have contact with anyone, because you have no functional immune system. So you've got to really keep the bugs at large. So by doing the weekly videos, and by people not only watching them, but responding and commenting, it has just been so amazing, the level of support that's been available just by doing that. It's also kept me on my toes for myself. Sometimes I will have been feeling maybe a little bit more down, like physically down, and not even realized it. And I go to shoot the video, and I always do the same thing to, take a little time in meditation and ask, what do I need to share today? And sometimes that's when I realize, like, uh-oh, I better take a day off, or, I better really think about what's going on. What does my body need? So it's been amazing. But I'd say overall, just the level of support that I've received from it has been unbelievable.
Yeah, I would think that creating that spirit of community where it's helping you, but I don't know how many people have probably been helped by hearing those videos. And for them, if they're ailing, realizing that they're not alone. There's somebody else out there.
Well, yeah, although my life has found its place in public, I'm an introvert by nature. So for me, shooting weekly videos and putting my life out for everyone to see and consume was horrifying. I had a colleague actually who dared me to do it. And, the dare was not just in jest. It was, he really knew this was going to make a difference for me and for my life and for other people. But it was probably the dare that got me to do it. And after the first one, I thought, oh, I didn't die doing that. I didn't die of embarrassment. Maybe I'll try the next week. And, most people don't know, I started my first career was acting. And so acting is great, right? You go on, you can be someone else. You're not sharing about yourself, you're just putting on a mask, and that's very enjoyable. But when it's all your own material, especially very emotional material, it's a different level of transparency and accountability.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was just thinking about when I first met you. It was you were leading a spiritual tour to Teotihuacan, which is just this marvelous, incredible space of energy and healing, which brings me to the subject of energy. I'm wondering if you use energy healing at all in your treatment.
I do. I'm a Reiki master. And I've done some form of energy medicine for probably 25 or 26 years and have trained in all sorts of different traditions, including Reiki. So for me, I love the hands-on approach. I mean, whether I'm floating or whether I'm directing my hands, but I do distant healing as well. I do distant reading. I can do remote reading, and all of that is based on being an energy receiver, if you will. So just like a stereo receiver, I just apparently am tuned up loud. So if I am trying to, for instance, I get a lot of prayer requests from people in the hospital who have loved ones in the hospital. And I just need a name and location. And energetically, I reach out and I feel for where they are. And then with their permission, I just lean in. And, long ago, it was probably 24 years ago, I was working as a medical intuitive. And that's basically what I do. I feel into the body, feel where the energy is. Oftentimes I get a very clear visual of what's happening. And then I report back to the loved one just in case doctors need to make an evaluation emergently. And then if the loved ones want for me to apply some Reiki or some kind of distant healing, and I will. There are certainly times where I realize that my job in that situation is to help the person transition and help the family become comfortable enough to accept the loss. But sometimes it works, sometimes I get really lucky and I get there at a time where even with, a hemorrhage on the brain or something like that, I can move it away from the brain fast enough so that we avert some of those life-threatening situations and the person can continue to heal on their own. I love integrative medicine, so I really love that combination of East and West. And for me, it's just how big a toolkit can I have? What can I stick my hands into now? But when I do it, I go for the gusto, I didn't want to just stop at Reiki 1, really wanted to learn it all. And so I definitely use a lot of energy medicine. And I think the other thing, even with dreams, and as you say, dreams during the day or the evening, for me, those dreams during the day, including things like past life regression, that for me is tapping out into the energy as a whole and learning from it, again, with a stereo receiver, grabbing the information and seeing where it's going to direct us next. So whether it's for myself or someone else.
Yeah. And, going back to dreams, I've talked to so many people, who have been able to diagnose, of course they would get a doctor's diagnosis afterwards, but to diagnose their illnesses that they were feeling through their dreams and wake up and know, okay, I'm feeling this, I'll get it confirmed by getting a medical diagnosis of it, but they can access that. These unseen forces often tend to dismiss them, but they are so powerful and have such great effect in our lives.
I don't know if you caught this particular Wisdom Wednesday, but I was in Ireland for the second time this summer and was there to do some transmuting work, which is passing souls through that have been blocked at one, say, location in time, passing them through my body so that they can transition completely. And I knew most of what I was going to do. I just didn't know the extent of it, nor did I really understand this story. And it all started with a past life regression that I did. How old's my oldest kid? Let's see, like 26 years ago. And I got access to some data, and it was deeply impacting my own physical being at that moment. So I needed to go to that lifetime, clear up some stuff, so that my physical body would change. And as I learned through time, that was appearing for me way more than I understood. And so I learned just how amazingly that can affect us, how we can, everything about us can be carried through in different versions of us throughout time.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to take a short break here. We are speaking about healing with Dr. Sage Breslin, and we'll be right back.
From bitter to better, wrong into right.
I'm Kelly Sullivan Walden, aka Dr. Dream, and I just wrote the book, A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, The Art of Transforming the Tragic into Magic. You can pre-order it wherever books are sold.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking about the process of healing with Dr. Sage Breslin. Well, Sage, we just talked about your most recent illness, but you actually had a lifetime of traumas affect you, both physical traumas in terms of accidents and physical and or mental traumas in terms of abuse. Do you feel that you look at these traumas as a blessing and that it's enabled you to handle anything life throws at you?
It's always such an interesting question. That one gets asked a lot. I think when we use the word blessing, it can really feel like a sting, like, come on, you're fine, so get over it. And this is no offense to you, and not speaking for myself at this time, but if I were to say to any one of my clients, hey, that unhealthy or toxic relationship is such a blessing because now that you're out of it, you learned how to show up, fill in the blank, da, 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 da. So I think that it's all about the timing, when we look at it that way. Initially, I think when we're in trauma, the best others can do is to acknowledge our reality, is to really validate how terrifying or painful or, whatever adjective describes it. And I think that as we get clear of the trauma, at least initially, then there is this space that if we're able to see what happened for us rather than to us, then I think it becomes a blessing. It's definitely been my MO throughout my lifetime, and more as, the stakes have gotten higher. I had to really, with this last go around, I really had to let people know. I got a lot of those posts on Facebook shared, F cancer and you'll kick cancer's butt. And I really had to let people know that I know exactly why this cancer showed up for me. I know why it showed up in this way. I know why the timing was, and it was exact, like right down to the minute. And none of that has put me at odds with the cancer. Would I have chosen to have cancer? No, absolutely not. I'm not a martyr. I would love not to have cancer, honestly, but I don't have a negative relationship with my cancer. It appeared so that I would make some huge life changes, which I have done. There are other things that have happened, other traumas. I had 27 miscarriages in my lifetime. It's a huge number. And each time felt like I was, dying because of it, because I wanted to be a mother so badly. And when I was in Ireland this last time and I was doing this energetic work, I counted back. After I was finished, I counted back and I thought, oh my God, there were 27 children that were massacred in that battle. I transmuted all of them through my own body in this lifetime. And the number was exact. It's amazing how, if we are open to the data, if we're open to the fact that life is showing up, spirit is showing up, and if we're willing to communicate and listen on a different level, there's all sorts of data that can be life-changing for us if we allow it. So yeah, I think as you said, it has been a blessing because I've learned how to accept those blessings. I think initially, yeah, each time was horrifically traumatic.
Oh yeah, and,
You know.
I didn't mean to imply that. Oh yeah, cancer, yay, yay,
Yay!
I got it. No, no, of course it's devastating, and nobody wishes that on anybody. I just was trying to, I guess, make the point that when we can learn from a bad situation, we can come out of it in the bad on a much better level and know so much more about ourselves. And what brought this to mind was a friend of mine who suffered a very disfiguring injury from an accident. And she is like one of the most optimistic, pleasant person I know. And she even said, we said, how did you get through this? And it turned out that she had had some trauma years before this. And what she had learned from that trauma was her belief that she is not her body.
Yeah.
And so when she was in that hospital fighting for her life, that feeling of, I'm not my body, this is not my body. And that enabled her to survive a situation that would have killed 95% of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important point actually. And that is part of that data that we can access if we're willing. And as you said, when we get through that place where we can step away from the trauma and see it for what it is, rather than staying sort of in the victimization, because it is important to realize if we've been abused by someone, at that time, we are victimized. We have been in the role of a victim, but we can also step out of it by getting out of an unhealthy relationship, for instance, or calling the police or whatever, right? Eventually we get free of that. And at that point in time, we have this wonderful opportunity to step first into survivor. And then with some help, we work towards being a thriver. We remind ourselves that, we are an essence or a being that exists inside the human. I like to tell my people, like, you're just wearing a human, but you got to be careful because the human is not infinite. The human has a lifespan and it will bruise if you hit it. You've got to take care of it. So you're right. I think there is a time where stepping out of the role or the experience of victim is life-altering in a good way.
Very much so. So when you're going through a situation like you're going through, like you said, there are good days and bad days. When you're having those bad days, what do you do to kind of keep yourself motivated, keep yourself in that more optimistic frame of mind?
Yeah, it sort of depends on where the bad is coming from. If I'm not sleeping, which does happen with my diagnosis from time to time, sometimes even the medication will do crazy things to my body. And on those like physically down days, the answer typically is just R&R. It's stay in. Do not expect a lot of myself. I have a friend who would say the answer to most situations is have a glass of hot tea. So sometimes I will rely on that. I am a total believer in the Queen's breakfast, which means I'm single, so I do it for myself. I put it on a nice tray. I carry it into my room and I have breakfast in bed every morning. That is especially important when I'm really struggling. My boys, I still have 3 boys at home, and they sometimes are kind enough to bring me breakfast or make me breakfast. And I think that's even better. That's even more healing. But when I'm emotionally down, I had an odd day yesterday where I couldn't even tell you why exactly. Something was happening, and it may have been something I was looking at in my dreams. And I was walking the dog and realizing, gosh, that's funny. I feel kind of just sad. And a lifetime from the 700s popped up. It was the one that I cleared in Ireland. And that energy has stayed with me consistently. And I could hear his voice, and I said, why do you need something? Do you need something from me? And he said, no, we just realized that you were feeling lonely and that you just needed us to be here. And I was like, okay, walking the dog and crying now. It was so wonderful to feel that support. But it didn't end there. And the long and short of the story is that I have been working at clearing another energy based on a block that had come up for me, that I wanted to get healthier. And I asked him, could you, from where you are, can you see where the root of this is? I've only been able to go back so far, and I know it goes back further than that. And he was able to show me the beginning. And then he stepped away and the whole lifetime unfolded. I was able to then engage and clear what had been happening, reactivated an energy that then came. And, unfortunately, that meant I was going to have to clear for about 24 hours. So this is a little bit of a down day as I'm trying to flesh all of that out. But it's amazing how something like that, all I needed was just to have that awareness of my own loneliness or sadness. And there was an energy right there to say, we're right here. You're not alone. Did you forget? What's your problem? Why'd you forget that? And those reminders can just be amazing. So whether it's accessing a higher power or God through meditation, whether it's going to a support network, oftentimes I will lean on my peeps, other people like me who are, different and special in a good way. And that usually does the trick.
Yeah, it's funny. It goes back to, you're doing those videos. It's about communication.
Yeah.
And realizing
and
that
connection.
And connection. When we feel that connection, if it's one person or to a group, it doesn't really matter. But if we feel that connection and we don't feel alone,
right,
it has such a difference.
Yeah, it is amazing in that way.
Yes. Is there a final thought you'd like to leave for our audience?
I would just say that there are a lot of us women out there who are old souls. We have always known that we were different. We may have always felt that way. And people may kind of come across us and say, wow, you're amazing. I just feel better when I'm around you. Or, gosh, your smile is just radiating energy. If you're an old soul, don't treat that lightly. That is really unique and special. And if you're not really leaning into it, that is the work that I do largely. And I do it mostly for women now, but that is something so powerful and the world needs us now. So if there's any cleanup work you need to do to be helpful to the world, I am here. And I would love to meet more folks who are in this category.
And how can people find out more about you and your work?
SageBreslin.com is my website. They can also reach me at sagewisdominstitute.com. That's my email. Always happy for people to reach out directly and I can tell them more about what's happening. And then my YouTube channel, Sage Breslin, has most of the Wisdom Wednesday videos, and it also has some of the Old Soul videos that are coming up.
Wonderful. Well, Sage, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thanks so much.
We've been speaking about pathways to healing with healer and author Sage Breslin. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If so, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio.